matter coming before this committee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest. Are there any conflict? Yeah, thanks, sir. Welcome to everybody. We're gonna move a little bit off of the agenda. I do want to go ahead and ask for approval of the minutes, mainly so I don't forget to do it later. Minutes are in your materials. Are there any questions or comments? Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Second? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? All right, jumping ahead, I'm gonna turn things over to Brian. We're very, very thankful to have Josh Weaver of the Texas Bar to talk about a program rather they have down there. So, Brian.
Well, and I'm really going to be handing it right over to Joshua. Joshua is with the Texas State Bar, and he runs the Texas Opportunity and Justice Incubator Program. He's been with the Texas Bar. Josh, I don't know if you want to give us a couple of little file points. I believe you've been there for a couple of years now. Certainly been running it, and we're just excited to have you join us. So take it away, Josh.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. And I just want to say thank you to everyone, especially for accommodating. This is, I think we're all kind of getting used to doing presentations and talks like this. It's a little weird to have everyone around the room, but I'm super glad to be visiting with you all today. I think this is a really interesting topic. I've had some great discussions with Brian, and I'm excited to get into this stuff. I talked to Brian as we were planning this out, and I am going to try and go through my slides relatively quickly. And the intention is that I want to make myself available to y'all to answer questions. So I think that's probably the more fruitful part of this potential discussion. And so I'll say my part and then open it up for any questions that y'all have. So as Brian did mention, I am the director of the Texas Opportunity and Justice Incubator. And just to give you a real short background on me, I originally started out in technology. So my first real job was I started a technology consulting company. I actually do know how to program. And so I coded a bunch of software and sold it all over the United States. Then I moved into working with startups, and then I went to law school. And then from law school, I started working on access to justice issues and found my way into working on the TOJI program, which I am very excited to tell you about today. All right, here's a brief agenda of what we're talking about today. I don't know if it'll be big enough on your screen, but I put a QR code. If you scan that, that will actually get you straight to a copy of my slides. So everyone always wants to get a copy of the slides. There's your chance. You can scan that with your phone and get straight to a copy of my deck. Essentially, what we are talking about today is I am giving you an overview of the TOJI program. I'm going to talk to you about the latent legal market and the opportunity that we believe that presents for attorneys. That may be a familiar topic for some of you. It may be a new and exciting topic for others, but I'm looking forward to talking about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the challenges that attorneys face as they enter the TOJI program and try and start new law firms. And I will give you just 30 seconds to a minute on what I think are indicators of success when somebody is trying to enter the program and start a new firm. And then we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the impact of TOJI on the communities here in Texas and whether or not starting a law firm can actually make a difference in this access to justice stuff. All right. A little intention setting before we launch into this stuff. And I'd love to hear from somebody in the audience if it's possible. Think back. Why did you originally become a lawyer in the first place?
Help people.
I heard to help people. Anybody else?
Everyone wants to help people, Josh.
Everyone wants to help people. All right. Yeah. That's the answer I usually get, right? To do good and help others. I think that's right. I know a gentleman in Harvard, and he's studied this, and they did a bunch of polling about people before they entered law school, during law school, after law school, and then like 4 or 5 years after law school. And one of the interesting things they found is that people's desire to do good and help others doesn't really diminish from the beginning of that journey through becoming a practicing lawyer. The main thing that diminishes is their belief that they actually can go do good and help others. Okay, so it's not for lack of desire. It is, according to that study, it is more for feelings of lack of opportunity. Okay, and so the crushing weight of sort of student loans and needing to get a job and the market and all these other things start to interfere. But deep down, I believe most attorneys actually really do want to do good and help others. I think that's kind of central to why most people become attorneys. So, there's that saying, everything's bigger in Texas. And so here are some statistics just to give some context to how we were thinking about this problem of access to justice as the TOJI program was first getting shaped up. So there are 50, or among the 50 states, Texas is second in terms of land area and population, and it has the third largest group of attorneys. I haven't checked, but I would suppose that it's probably New York and California are number one, number two. We have just over 105,000 lawyers to cover 254 counties. If there were a perfectly even division of those lawyers, that'd be about 400 lawyers per county. However, as we know, that's not what happens in reality. They tend to all cluster up around the major metropolitan areas. So we actually have 67 out of 254 counties where we have 5 lawyers or fewer. 17 counties report just having 1 lawyer. You can guess the average age of the attorney that's in that one county, right? It's pretty elderly at this point. 6 counties reported having no lawyers at all. Okay, so we know we have a large area. We know we have a huge need, and we know that we have some sizable legal deserts where folks aren't able to get connected to attorneys. Some other information, nearly 4 million people in Texas are living below the poverty level. 5.2 million Texas folks qualify for legal aid. That's 125% of the poverty line as set by the federal government. However, there's approximately 1 legal aid lawyer for every 7,000 Texans who qualify. Okay, so one single attorney is trying to help as many as 7,000 of those 5.2 million folks. Due to lack of resources, less than 10% of civil legal needs are met for low and poor Texans. And then for every person who is accepted into a legal aid program, there is usually a qualifying individual that is being turned away. So this is a pretty big problem. I mean, this is a serious problem on our end. Of course, the ABA put out an article, I believe it was 2016, and they stated that an estimated 80% of people living in the United States either can't afford or perceive that they can't afford legal services. And if you're plugged into access to justice at all, this is the number that you see get thrown around quite regularly. So as TOJI was getting started, one of the questions that was being discussed at the state bar here in Texas was, is there a way that starting a law firm can help attorneys make an impact on this access to justice problem? And things have changed a bit since 2017 when TOJI first started, but essentially this question is still what has driven a lot of how TOJI has shaped up and kind of where we're going in the future. All right, here's an overview of TOJI. So Texas Opportunity and Justice Incubator, it is a flagship program in the State Bar of Texas. So we are part of the State Bar. There are lots of other legal incubators around the nation, around the world. They are not all part of state bars. There are some that are attached to law schools. There are some that are self-funded. There are some that are part of other charitable organizations. We just happen to be connected to the State Bar. It was started as an initiative in 2017 by the State Bar President, Frank Stevenson. And the charge back then was to, help attorneys as they build solo and small practices. The focus then was more attorneys that had just graduated from law school. And that has really changed over time. We are now directed at a very diverse group of attorneys. So we have some folks that have practiced for decades, some folks that are on their second career. And then we also have some folks that are relatively right out of law school. TOJI members in the program are working to try and close the access to justice gap. And specifically, we are having them do that by trying to help them target the latent legal market. Okay. And so there's this common myth that if you are an attorney that is working in serving low income or moderate income communities, you kind of have to take on this vow of poverty for yourself. And that is one of the things that we address very early in the program. That is not true. And we will kind of hint at and talk about why that's not true in the short time that we have today. But we believe that you can definitely do well for yourself by doing good in the community. Some quick facts about the program itself. So what does it actually look like? If you're familiar with a tech incubator, that's my background is tech, right? If you're familiar with a tech incubator, it is very similar in structure to a tech incubator. The main difference is we're not taking equity in any of these businesses, right? So in a tech incubator, they do all these things to help your business succeed. And then in return, if you become a big home run hit, that's going to make the folks behind the incubator a bunch of money. In our case, we kind of do the same thing, but the thing that we get back is we are creating good in the community and we are trying to reduce this access to justice problem. But I want to be clear, it is not a for-profit enterprise that we are engaged in. Okay, typically speaking, it is a 12-month program. We usually have about 20 to 35 law firms that get into each cohort. It is a competitive selection process. So for the last cohort, we ended up with 21 law firms, started in February, and we had just under 100 law firms apply. So, or 100 would-be law firms or lawyers. So it is a competitive process. In addition to the coaching that the folks receive from me, we have also 70 other volunteers and coaches. About 2/3 of them are attorneys. The other third make up experts in various aspects of business. So you can kind of imagine what that looks like: finance, marketing, right? All those sorts of things that you would need to know in order to be good at business. Another big shift from TOJI's origin is that we used to operate virtually, or we used to operate in Austin, Texas, and you physically had to be here in Austin to participate. We now operate completely virtually. This was before COVID, believe it or not, so not in response to COVID, but we chose proactively to move to this model. And the main reason was we wanted attorneys to be able to stay in the communities where their legal services are needed instead of brain draining those communities and forcing everyone to live in Austin. So we do operate virtually, and that allows us some flexibility to support attorneys even in very rural communities. And that's where a lot of those legal deserts are, right? All right. I know everyone's curious about TOJI funding. So here's how TOJI was funded. Originally, it was $1 million seed fund from the State Bar of Texas. So they just carved out $1 million from the bar budget, and they set that aside and said, this can't be touched. This is for TOJI. The expectation at that time was that TOJI would last 3, maybe 4 years off of that budget, and then it would go out of existence. I am very pleased to report that we are in our 6th year. Well, we're in our 7th year now, actually. So we've made it through 6 years. We're in our 7th, and currently we are projecting that we have enough funds to continue the program for another 3 to 4 years if nothing were to change. So we're doing pretty well with that money. In addition to that initial seed fund, we do collect nominal tuition fees from our active members. I want to spell out exactly what that means. If you were to write down on paper what they are getting in return for their tuition, they're getting something like 10x their money. So we try and essentially keep their tuition as low as we possibly can. Right now it's set at $350 per month per person, but they're getting a really high value for that return. We do think that if we wanted to, we could crank that number up quite a lot, but we don't want to. We want this to be something that is affordable and accessible to as many people as we can possibly make it. All right. As I've indicated before, the main goals of the program, we essentially have 2 missions. Number 1, help attorneys establish sustainable law firms. In 1 year, we are trying to sprint to the point where the business that is started during that year is sustainable. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you are going to be rolling in money or, chartering private jets or anything crazy, but we want you to be able to meet all of your needs and have the ability to continue growing that firm into whatever your vision is for that firm. Mission number 2 is we want to make a meaningful difference in connecting lawyers to the public that really needs those legal services, but isn't currently getting it. All right, I'm going to transition for a short bit to talk about the latent legal market. So if you've heard of this term, I think this is a really exciting way to think about what is commonly talked about as a problem or an issue, and instead to reframe that as an opportunity. Okay, and I think this is really important, not just for kind of being generally positive and upbeat, but really to inform your thinking as you are working with attorneys who are trying to start new and innovative law firms. So what is the latent legal market? I'm quoting Clio founder Jack Newton. Jack Newton wrote this quite a while back. This was probably 2017, 2018. Said the latent legal market refers to the untapped potential of all of the would-be legal clients who aren't currently using legal services to solve their legal issues. Okay, and to take a snapshot of what that looks like, I've seen a couple different numbers thrown around on this. So, if you find a number that's slightly different, I am aware there are some competing numbers on this. But in 2020, it was estimated that approximately $437 billion was the total amount of money spent on legal in the United States. Okay, so just under $4.5 billion, $100 billion was the total legal spend. And that includes everyone, right? Big companies, Joe Schmo, everybody. And yet we know that, between 77% and 80% or so of folks have legal issues that are going unresolved by a lawyer. So you start looking at that math and you start thinking about it and you think, wow, okay, if we have over $400 billion in spend, that represents this relatively tiny portion of legal problems in the United States. What does that mean, right? What can we draw from that? The ABA says 80% of the public can't afford or perceives they can't afford legal help. Well, just doing a little napkin math, it looks like this is a $1 trillion market that is not currently being served. And I like talking about this in terms of a product market fit opportunity. Okay, so again, I'm sorry, I come from this legal tech startup background, right? And so before I was a lawyer, I did all that technology stuff. Entrepreneurs in that space always talk about product market fit, right? You're building a business. What's the first main thing you got to do? Well, you got to figure out your product market fit. Essentially, what that just means is you have an idea for a product, you have an idea for a service, you think that there's a demand for that in the market, and then you go through a process of iterating, adapting, learning, and revising until you get to a point where the product that you have is a really good fit with what the market actually supports. Okay. And so I think Jack Newton's essentially correct, right? We have a huge opportunity in this 80% or so of the market that's not being served, where if we can figure out a better fit between the product and the market, that is an enormous opportunity. It's not a problem. It's an opportunity, right? So I think that is a meaningful distinction between the way that a lot of people talk about access to justice and the way that it can be viewed as an actual business opportunity. I've probably already overtalked this, but essentially, I think this really is an unprecedented opportunity, not just to compete and win in new market share, but also to make a really tremendous difference in the lives of the people that are in the community. One of the examples that I really love is there's the old example. At this point, it's getting a little dated, but there's the example of Netflix versus Blockbuster. And in the Netflix versus Blockbuster comparison, a fair number of people talk about how Netflix put Blockbuster out of business. But Netflix didn't just compete and take away Blockbuster's market share. They actually created a whole new market that didn't exist before, right? They found a new market that Blockbuster had never recognized was there. And so Blockbuster at its absolute peak, tiny in comparison to Netflix at its peak, right? And that's only possible when you find that there's this, big latent market that exists. I think essentially lawyers are in a very similar situation, right? It's not just about carving out a portion of the market and trying to compete against the way that law has been done in the past. It is about creating an entirely new type of market, right? Out of this big latent market that's not being served. All right, I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the challenges that lawyers face when they start a new practice. I hope that the next couple slides are a slightly different look at this topic. I mean, I know I'm talking to a bunch of lawyers and you all probably have your ideas already about what it's like to start a law firm. Some of you probably have already started a law firm. And so, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I get this question a lot from people that are considering entering the program. And so during that very selective period where we're interviewing people and putting them through this rigorous application process, a lot of times they want to know from me kind of what should I expect, what's difficult, and what is a good indicator of success. So here's my short list. I think these are the hardest things for attorneys as they're starting new law firms. Spoiler, it is not whether or not people will call you. That's the thing lawyers tend to worry about the most is, if I start a business, am I going to have any clients? That is actually not the biggest concern. That happens relatively reliably. Here are some of the things that are concerns, right? Learning new skills and wearing a lot of hats all at once. Lawyers tend to be kind of perfectionists, right? We all are taught through law school, passing the bar, becoming attorneys, that there are very harsh penalties for being wrong and for being imprecise and for being late. That's all good when you're practicing law, but if you are trying to quickly build a business, you got to eject that idea, right? You have to be willing to make mistakes. You have to be willing to quickly iterate on ideas and try new things. Managing time and money effectively. I mean, not a lot of people in law school have gone through the process of learning how to manage a business or have those business skills. So learning time and money management is really important. Building a business that you actually really love. That is a huge one. I know some people, unfortunately, that work their butts off to develop a business, and then at the end of the day, they hate owning that business. And that's how people get burned out, right? If you hate owning the business that you have to work so hard to grow and maintain, it's a recipe for disaster. So we spend a lot of time talking about what are the things that are really important to you? What are the things that are important in your life outside of work? And how can we make this a business that actually works for you to accomplish those goals rather than just being a success on paper, but otherwise being a burden on your life? We've already talked about the latent legal market a bit, but finding that great product market fit, super important. That's where a lot of the innovation happens in the program. That's where people start to experiment with different pricing models, different ways of delivering legal services, different structures for law firms. That is perhaps the most exciting part of my job, is working with people as they come up with all these, great new ideas. Selecting the right technology. I mean, if you are going to offer legal services and it's going to be more affordable, you cannot get away from the importance of technology. Technology is a tool that it's not the only tool, but it is one of the really important tools for innovating in how you are making legal services more affordable, while also making good money, right? And then, of course, building a strong reputation within the community, right? It kind of goes without saying, but credibility is so important, and so building up that reputation is really super important. Here are the things that I see in our applicants that are strong indicators of their success throughout the program. So willingness to experiment and fail often, far and away the most important thing. If you come with a learner's mindset into this program and you're just willing to get out there, try, fall down, embarrass yourself a little bit, pick yourself back up and keep trying, that correlates very highly with success in this program and success beyond this program. So also being willing to make decisions in the face of uncertainty, being highly adaptable, really important. Having resiliency, having a community of people around you that can support you and can kind of lift and carry you through that process, big indicator of success. We talk a lot about kind of flipping the way that a lot of people think about law firms away from sort of the lawyer perspective and really focusing in on the client's perspective. What is it like to be a client for your law firm? What is it like to be a client that is searching for legal services and not having success finding them, right? If you're trying to get to that untapped legal market, at some point you have to wonder, why is such a large percentage of people failing to find the legal services that they need? It's not just about money. It's also about that product market fit, right? And then, of course, being unafraid to ask for help and being reflective and curious, also just natural tendencies, natural leanings that I think are really rewarded in this entrepreneurial space. Okay, what do you actually get if you're in Toji? I mean, you get a lot of stuff, but I would break it down into roughly 3 categories. So category number 1, and this is, I'm very proud of the other 2 categories, very proud of it. But if you ask our alums, the thing that they will say over and over again is the major benefit, the thing that like got them through and made the difference, it is the network. And so we have a network of approximately 120 attorneys who within the last 6 years have all been through the process of starting a law firm. They are awesome. And if you need help, if you are struggling, whatever you are struggling with, there is a relatively high chance that somebody in our network has gone through the same thing or something similar, and we can get you connected to them and they can sit down with you, have a coffee, and help you and encourage you. And, it is scary and tough to build a business by yourself, but if you know that you are surrounded by other people who have done it recently and that they're willing to help you, it takes a lot of the uncertainty and the scariness about that whole process out of the picture. So Toji Network, big, important part of it. Number 2, they get a lot of coaching. And so we do a 2-month boot camp at the beginning. That's really intense. We cover a bunch of topics really fast. And then we do a 10-month accelerator process where we are trying to help them grow their firm as rapidly as possible. During that time, we coach them about essentially everything other than the substantive practice of law. So if you have questions about substantive practice of law, we're going to send you to the alumni network. We're going to find somebody that you can get some mentorship from. But what we're really focused on during the boot camp and during the accelerator is everything about how to start and run a successful law firm. So it's very business focused. We'll talk about technology, marketing, staffing, operations, how to scale, how to do your finances, how to do your business model, right? If you can think of it and it's related to business, we do our best to try and cover it. The Toji Toolkit is also relatively important. We don't advertise this very heavily, but as I alluded to earlier, if you are a member in the program, you are getting a toolkit full of software and services that we think basically addresses all of the basic needs that an attorney would have as they are starting their law firm. So if you were making a list of what would be your fixed overhead for that first year in terms of software and services, you would come up with an array of basic things that you need in order to organize your law firm, to advertise to the public, and then to actually operate and work through your cases and deal with your clients. We've kind of gone thing by thing, need by need, and we've put together partnerships and collaborations with big name companies. And that toolkit is provided for the most part as included under their tuition. So they don't pay anything extra to access most of this stuff. There is one small exception. If we have somebody that we're partnered with where the partnering company has to pay somebody in order to service that service, in other words, you can think of like a virtual receptionist, then what we do is we get that at a heavy discount rather than completely for free, and that's offered optionally to the members. But most of the stuff that they're going to need is included in that tuition that they're paying. We've played around a lot with the different requirements for being in Toji, but here's what we have settled on, and I think this is relatively stable at this point. So you have to be licensed and in good standing to practice law in the state of Texas. Sorry, if you're a law student and you're just trying to get ahead, you're going to have to be patient and wait. We need you to actually be licensed by the time you start in the program. Everyone pledges to do 10 hours of pro bono service each month. That is free legal service, no expectation of any compensation offered to somebody who is in that low income bracket. You need to carry malpractice insurance while you're an active member. You have to be able to keep up with your TOJI tuition. You have to report your pro bono service and a lot of business metrics back to the program on a monthly basis. So we want to know, roughly speaking, what are you doing for your pro bono? And then we also want to know, give us like the messy guts of your business in number form so that we can track and see, how are these businesses growing? What does success look by month 3? What does it look like by month 6? What does it look like by 12 months in, right? I always tell folks it is great for me to sit down and hear what you intuitively think is wrong with your law firm. It is very helpful for me to be able to see the actual numbers and comb through that and get a better idea of where you might be having trouble. And then it's really important to us that we find people to be part of the community that really just embrace our values and want to contribute to the community. And I will say this is a point that I am particularly proud of the program. The folks that I work with, the folks that come through this program, they are, just downright inspiring. They are the biggest hearted people that really, really, really deeply care about trying to make a difference and trying to do good in the world and use that power as an attorney to go really make a meaningful difference. And so I think that curating that community and keeping it a community that really cares about those values is a big part of the success of the folks in the program and of the program itself. All right, kind of shifting to the last thing that I had planned to talk about today, and then I'll take any questions that folks have. So we want to know, does this work, right? At the end of the day, does this work? And so we have a couple different ways of trying to measure whether or not this program is making a difference and whether or not it works. One of them is to look at the saturation of TOJI members throughout the spots in Texas where we have these legal deserts and we need people to have more of a presence. You can see on this map, the darker the shading, the more the area is a legal desert. So these are our more rural areas in Texas. We have out here in West Texas in El Paso, up here in the Panhandle, out near Lubbock, and down here in the valley, right next to Mexico, and a little bit over here next to Louisiana, right? Now, this hasn't been updated since 2020. I really do need to go back and do another survey and get this all updated. But you can see, although we do have a fair, we have a fair amount of cluster in the cities, right? This is DFW, this is Austin, San Antonio, Houston area, right, all in here. We also do have folks that are out here near El Paso, right, in the really rural area. We have some folks out here in a really rural area up near Lubbock. We have folks down in the valley in this really rural area, right? And so this is one of the ways that we think that this program is really making a difference, right? We have folks that are going out and touching communities in areas where there may be literally only one other attorney for multiple counties. So it's something we're really proud of. It's the virtual platform component of the program that allows for this. So, we'll have people that tune in by satellite sometimes to participate, and we're good with that. Here's some other ways to try and measure the effectiveness of the program. So I like numbers. I know lawyers don't always love numbers, but I like numbers. We've graduated 7 cohorts at this point. That accounts for over 120 members and approximately 110 law firms founded. Not all of our members actually end up founding a law firm. Sometimes they end up joining another law firm, or they found like something that is law firm adjacent. So we've had some folks that have started like some nonprofit type organizations. But that's a fair chunk of law firms, right? Over 110 law firms. We have measured that they have done a combined just under 11,000 hours of pro bono And this is dated back to about 6 or 7 months ago. So we run this a couple times a year to get these numbers. But as of 6 or 7 months ago, we were just under 11,000 hours. Using a fairly conservative calculation, valuing that time at about $200 an hour, we think that's an access to justice dividend of just over $2 million for pro bono work. We also try and track modest means hours, and that is basically anybody that wouldn't qualify for pro bono work, but also doesn't have the money to go pay normal rates for an attorney, AKA that's basically most of the population. We have just under 28,000 hours of modest means hours, and using, I believe this was either 100 or $125 an hour to measure out this impact, which is sitting just under 3 million. Combined, that equals just under a $5 million impact in low and modest means service from TOJI members to the Texas communities. Or another way to look at it with regard to the success of the program is that for every dollar that has been invested in the TOJI program from the State Bar, our members have gone out and created roughly $5 in access to justice value. So we think this is a really good return on the money. And I think this should be encouraging for other folks that have an interest in maybe getting their own incubator or something similar set up. All right. And with that, as promised, I will do any questions that people have.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions? Marcy?
Hey, Josh, it's Marcy Armstrong. So you said $1 million, you have a unified bar, so that money did it come from both the voluntary and the mandatory bar? You know?
So our bar in Texas is 100% mandatory. So every Texas attorney is part of the bar, and there's no way out of it. And yes, the funding did come through that, I believe, primarily through CLE activity. So the bar sells CLE, and then that money gets distributed in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I think, Josh, this is Peter Ball. Like, I'm wondering, maybe, Marcia, are you asking, like, maybe if the funding complies with, like, the State Bar's Keller requirements on how they can use funding? You know, is it funds that is coming from mandatory dues, or is it coming from other income sources to the bar?
My impression is that it was both. And there are limitations on what we can and cannot do with our funds. Recently, we just had a court case about this subject, and essentially the main limitation that was placed on, or well, I don't want to say it was placed on us, but the main thing that came out of that court case was the State Bar needed to stay away from any kind of policy lobbying efforts. So, yeah.
Josh, I have a question. This is Brian. Did you all ever consider offering the services to TOJI members for free as opposed to charging a tuition? And what was the decision in kind of creating the tuition-based model?
Yes. So we did consider whether or not there should be any tuition at all. And there are some programs, I believe, that offer their incubator with no tuition. The two primary factors for why to charge tuition, by my recollection, is that number one, we want people to be invested and serious about starting their law firm, right? So we're not asking them for a lot of money, but if you're trying to start a business and you can't scrape together, $300 a month, it's questionable how serious and how committed you are at that point to actually starting a business. So getting a little bit of skin in the game, we have found is really beneficial for keeping people engaged, keeping people serious about it, and for filtering out people that are really not at a point in their life where they're, really going to give it a go. The other side of it is that, as we have tracked the impact of TOJI over the years, because we are seeing really compelling numbers like that, for every dollar invested, $5 of value is being created. The state bar decided, we don't want to let this program die after a couple of years, right? And so at that point, there's basically two options. And one option is for the program to find ways for it to sustain itself. The other option is to keep going back every so often and ask the bar to replenish the money that is funding the program. So far, we have managed not to have to go back and ask the bar for more money. And for various political reasons, I think that's an advantage. And that's about all I'll say on that.
Alan, I saw Alan saying first.
How have you marketed or advertised the program to get the participants?
Yeah, how have we marketed the program? So I will say this is something that is maybe a built-in advantage to the location of the TOJI program, because we have a really large bar. The larger the bar, even if it's a really small percentage of person that you're looking for, the better the odds of finding that person. But primarily what we do is we send out emails that go to a targeted demographic within the bar. So we send out like 3 or 4 of those every time we're recruiting. I go and I talk to all of the law schools that are in Texas. And so I present to law students and explain to them what the program is, how it works, the benefits and the reasons why they might want to be involved. We also work with alumni associations at the law schools. And so if they get word of somebody in their alumni base who is trying to start a law firm, we want them to point them in our direction. I also work with the local bars. So at really any local bar that's interested in it, I will go and do a short presentation, explain what TOJI is about, and talk to anybody that has an interest in it. And then outside of that, we do some kind of indirect marketing where we create content that is related to the topic of running a business and running a practice. And we post that content, and folks that are interested in that content tend to want to know more about the program and tend to also be kind of naturally interested in starting their own law firms.
Saw some other hands.
I think Andrew and then
Andrew.
So, in the rural areas, how are you handling the fee structure? Is it flat fee based, reduced rates? Because that's going to be the challenge of making the numbers work at the end of the year.
Yeah, the rural areas, that is, it's always a challenge. I mean, I don't want to make this seem easier than it is. It is really tough if you're in a rural location to figure out exactly what the market can support and also how to best serve it. However, in the favor of the folks that are willing to go and serve in those rural communities, their main problem, in my experience, is just figuring out how to scale their business. They have no shortage whatsoever of potential clients. In fact, commonly the meeting that I have with them early in the program is they are completely overwhelmed with the amount of interest in their new law firm, and they have no idea how to handle it. They don't understand how to get to hiring their first staff. They don't understand, essentially. So it tends to be an organizational challenge and a scaling challenge more than anything else. We do have folks that do flat fee. We have folks that do sliding scale. We have folks that do unbundled services where they will sort of pick apart different parts of the matter and offer them in sort of bite-sized portions. And then we have some folks that just do regular traditional billable hour. I would say it's a little more alternative fee leaning though than billable hour. So more flat fee than other styles.
Mark.
I'm Mark Enriquez. Congratulations on the success of the program. Do you require them to do a certain amount of pro bono or low income work? And how is that requirement transmitted to the TOJI participant firm?
Yeah, we require everyone to do an average of 10 hours per month. So by the time they graduate from the 12 months, they should have they should either meet or exceed 120 hours of pro bono service. And we define that the way that the Texas Pro Bono College defines it, which is legal services rendered for no expectation of compensation for somebody who's in that low income bracket. So, and I'll say one thing here too. This isn't really your question, but it's very closely related. That's actually a smaller portion of our program in terms of focus. We are really focusing more on that moderate income part of the population because we actually have fairly robust programs in Texas for dealing with low income. And so, we're trying to distribute our resources as responsibly as we can. So they do some pro bono, that's the 10 hours a month, but then we're really trying to incorporate service to everyone that's just above that range in their regular day-to-day practice. And then in terms of reporting, we have a portal, and every month they log into the portal and they have to report hours and activities and things like that for us to track.
Jim,
Do you have any ways in which you work in helping folks that participate with their debt load coming out of law school?
No, and I really wish that we did. I think that it would be great if we did. The closest that I could say that we've ever come to something like that is we have had folks that have gone through the program who have started nonprofit law firms. And if you can get your nonprofit set up properly and then properly qualified by the government, that can count towards 10 years of student loan forgiveness. But outside of that limited circumstance, I don't know what solution we have to offer for that. I think it's a big problem, but I don't know that we have.
In a private nonprofit, you can get the 10-year loan forgiveness?
Sorry, I missed part of the question.
Yeah, so in the private nonprofit, you can get the loan forgiveness after 10 years if it's a private nonprofit. Is that what you're saying? As opposed to like a DA's office or public defender or some other kind of public service?
We have had folks that have been able to get their nonprofit qualified for student loan forgiveness. Yeah.
Same question goes for health insurance. Same question goes for health insurance. Have you been able to figure out a way to help them with health insurance costs?
Run a successful enough business that you can purchase health insurance, I guess is where that goes. I mean, again, this is, I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture. These are real concerns. One of the things that I talk to the folks about when they're in their very first interview is I ask them fairly intrusive questions about their financial circumstances and how they're going to plan for things like their health insurance and whether people are dependent on them. And if they quit their job, what is that going to mean for, their financial stability? And so a lot of the folks that do this, there is definitely a bias when it comes to health insurance to having a spouse who has health insurance through some other means. And so the folks that are feeling a little bit less stressed about this tend to have a spouse that has, decent health insurance that they're covered by. But it's a real problem. I mean, and not everyone has that luxury. So.
I'm wondering if you have the initial $1 million grant and you're getting $350 a month per participant. Do you have any other source of funding, either from corporations or potential vendors to these folks, or any sort of other sources of funding that has made the program as sustainable as it has been?
The answer is no. We've not accepted any money from any other sources. We have discussed the possibility of seeking out additional grant money, like from MacArthur or from other sources. There's actually some question about whether or not, as a quasi-government agency, we would be able to do that. And so it was only somewhat recently that our attorneys gave us the thumbs up and said that that would be something that we could figure out if that ever came up. We don't accept any money from any companies, or at least we haven't ever in the past. But we do, and this is a really key component, we do have very strong relationships with these companies that are trying to market their services and software to our attorneys. And so we've been very selective about who we work with. And essentially, just to pull back the curtain, the deal usually goes something like this. Hey, company, we think that you're amazing. We think that you would be a huge benefit for our attorneys. Here's the program. Here's how it's set up. If you will give our members access for the 12 months that they're in the program, and if your software or service is any good, there's an expectation that after the 12 months, that person likely turns into a paying customer. And then the company feels good that they're able to do something that is, making an impact in the community while also having it be a loss leader for a potential customer in the future. So that part is really important. Although money is not changing hands directly, it does make a really big impact on the affordability of the program and the success of the attorneys, because they're getting straight into, the best software and services that you might need in order to build a law firm. It's stuff that most of our members wouldn't normally be able to afford, whether they were if they weren't in the program.
Yeah, I think we're going, in the interest of time, Evan, I think it's gonna be your last
Yes,
question.
thank you. And congratulations again for what you've done, having spent some time both in the legal aid and at the public defender's office here in North Carolina. But it sounds like that you are setting up independent solo practitioners with really no limitations on what cases they can take. So my question to you is, are there any limitations on taking criminal cases? Likewise, what are the most frequent type of cases that you see in the original 12 months of these fledglings trying to get their business off the ground?
Yeah, great question. We don't limit the type of cases that they're allowed to take. I do know that some incubators do put limits on that, but ours does not. We eventually stopped polling people about this, but the last time that we were polling, we had people report in aggregate 35 different areas of law that they represented or worked in. So after 35, we kind of figured it wasn't as meaningful to continue trying to track that. I will say that there are really predictable and common patterns among the law firms in the first 12 months. And so really common areas where people get started are in criminal defense, immigration, landlord-tenant, debt, consumer debt. And that probably covers like 2/3, if not 3/4 of the practice areas of most people that are coming in. We also have some folks that do some really, really niche areas of practice. And one of the things that I make a big deal about at the beginning of every cohort is if you're not sure exactly the area of law that you want to get into, at least pick one really niche area of the law to experiment with and see if it's a good fit. And the folks that have been willing to do that, there's been a very high correlation between being willing to specialize and pick something that is more niche and more rapidly getting to the point where they are sustainable.
Thank you. Again, in the interest of time, Josh, thanks so much for your time. We may invite you back again, but we very much appreciate it. And next time Marcy's in Texas, he'll buy your dinner.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, moving along, and again, in the interest of time, we've got a couple of subcommittee reports in Council O'Brien. I think we'll just let y'all read those. They're kind of brief, and I'll hit the synopses. Legal Deserts, we had Mary Pollard. We're talking about public defenders' offices there. Catherine Price handling the unbundled legal services. They just got started on that. We hope to have something in July for y'all to look at on that. But I do want to spend our remaining time, for those of you who don't know, this is Jimbo Perry. He, along with Mel Wright, are the Chief Justice's Commission of Professionalism. And lately the officers have been doing the traveling road show, and Jimbo has been kind enough to go along with us on that. We let Jimbo talk at the end because, as you're about to see, he would show the rest of us up if he went first. So, Jimbo, I'm gonna put you on a pitch clock.
Okay,
So
very good. The reason I'm kind of standing out because I wear tennis shoes sometimes when I go to court. That's one of the advantages of living in a small town, right? You wear tennis shoes to court.
And you're 8 feet tall.
I was dying to know if that was a red bone Y'all, it was that red thing, I think we're talking about, sometime I'll tell you a story, a good story about a red thing, but. So I love what Marcy says when she says that there's not one solution, is there, to the legal desert? There are 100. And each of us play a part in making some progress, moving the needle a little bit. And what a great presentation that was by Josh, and what a great idea. And it's one, honestly, I haven't thought about before, but I'm looking forward to thinking about it and exploring it. So I'm working with Mel and with the Chief Justice Commission on Professionalism, and one of the main concerns that we have is access to justice. And so I've been cut loose since January 3rd to go out and explore what the first time I went to a law school I called the legal desert. And so I got to advertise a little bit, put up a few signs around and said, who would like to come hear about legal deserts? Don't want to come work in a legal desert. And nobody showed up. So we backed up a little bit and we thought, well, maybe we've got a branding problem. But part of the branding problem is maybe we've got a problem with telling the whole truth. Because so-called underserved areas are great places to live, aren't they? Lots of us are from small communities. So we rebranded it, we call it a legal oasis in an underserved community. And so the second time I show up and we advertise it as a legal oasis in an underserved community. And we had pizza, that's true. And we had 70 people show up. And and we have a panel of 5, and we had an amazing panel with different folks giving their perspective on why they have chosen to practice in a small community, from a DA's office, a legal aid, private practice, a judge who originally was in a small community is now an appellate judge. And after our meeting, we had literally law students lined up for 2 hours wanting to talk to panel members. I want to go back to what Josh said at the beginning, and Josh asked the question of us, why did we come to law school? Why do you go to law school? And that's what I'm doing when I'm going to the law schools. I'm going and I'm asking students, rather than what kind of law do you want to do? Where do you want to work? I'm asking the question, why did you come to law school? And honestly, most everybody says something like this. This sounds cheesy, but I came to law school because I want to help people. But as one of the career placement folks has told me, there's no linear path to working in a legal oasis. Because before you even go to your first day of class at law school, you're getting emails from career services and they're saying to you, you got to get your CV together, your resume together, because there are interviews that are going to be coming in and they want to talk to you and we want to get your CVs out to everybody. And of course, the only people interviewing are the people with a budget to interview. Now, I've been in small town practice for about 40 years. I don't have a budget to interview. I'm worried about if I can pay my secretary next month and hopefully have some money for a draw. And I have found over time, I've done okay. It's been okay, but I still don't have in my budget interviewing or trying to go and recruit. So it doesn't take long before the hype gets out about somebody gets an interview with this big firm or that big firm and they're going to be making this much money. And all of a sudden, everybody is moving in that direction. Before I came over here today, I went by Campbell and I sat down in the front lobby with a young man named JC. And JC is having, as I had in law school, I don't know if you did, as I had in law school, I had a crisis in confidence. And the reason for that was because I wasn't in the top 10%. And I didn't get the interviews. I can remember pasting on my bathroom wall all the rejection letters, even some of it didn't even get rejection letters. But there is a crisis in confidence in there if you're not in that top tier. Maybe ending up, as I've heard one student say, instead of with a golden parachute, golden handcuff. I know one law student I taught, well, recent grad from 2 years ago, and I was asking him how things were going. He said, the only real pleasure, because he was one of those guys that said, I've come to law school because I want to help people. And he's with a big time firm making big money. And he said, the only real pleasure I get out of practicing law is when I check my bank account and I see how much money I'm making. As opposed to my new friend Ben Royster, up around Mount Airy, when I was talking to him about his law practice, he said to me, and this was on a Thursday afternoon, he said, Jimbo, it's almost 4 o'clock. He said, I'm coaching my son's basketball team. Could we talk tomorrow? And that was kind of the difference. That's why it is a legal oasis rather than a legal desert. But each of us play a part in that. One student I've been talking to recently is from down near in a town near where I'm from, and he spent the last 2 summers volunteering in a law firm, trying to get his foot in. And I talked to him a few weeks ago, and he hadn't gotten a job offer yet from that firm down in Eastern North Carolina. And so he sees these postings still. He's moving in the direction of going to Raleigh because he knows he can make decent money. And so I find out who the lawyer's daughter is, and I call her up and I say, you got to talk to your daddy and go give him a job offer. And then here's the job offer the young man got. When he went to go see him, the lawyer said, he said, what will it take to get you to come here? Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds kind of familiar to the way in which I've made job offers in the past. I'm not going to hire 1L. I'm not going to hire 2L because I don't have money to do it. And a 3L, what I see is, and Mel and I've established kind of a standing committee from all the districts in the state. And we've asked them, who do you want? Would you consider hiring 1L, 2L, or who? And most everybody says, I'll take a 3L that wants to live here. And that's about all we've got time or energy to do a lot of times, isn't it? So this is not only kind of a law student problem, this is my problem. I noticed one of the things that Josh had done was he had done a little work with Chick-fil-A. What's the byline of Chick-fil-A? It's my pleasure. I want to suggest to you that we, as attorneys in small towns, and with our friends in small towns, is we need to start thinking about, would it be our pleasure to bring in another lawyer into our firm and show them the way. I was with a lawyer in Concord 2 weeks ago, and I asked him about his succession planning, because I think it all ties in together, doesn't it? Succession planning, mentoring, legal desert, legal oasis. And he said, one day somebody's going to come in on Sunday morning, they're going to find me slumped over on my desk, and that's my succession plan. But the reality is, that's the way most of us in small towns really are doing it. Our identity is wrapped up in our law, which it should be, but we're not taking time to take a step back and to say, what can I do to be part of bringing the next generation along? These law students do want to help people. We are helping people. As Cecil told me from Salisbury, Cecil said, I not only help clients with their cases, I help them with their lives. And what a great privilege that is for us that are in that kind of work. And we need to share that with the next generation. I can promise you that I'm out. When I don't have something else to do, I go sit in the front lobby of law school and I meet people. I met Phil last week and we were leaving the bathroom. And I asked Phil, I said, Phil, what do you want to do? He said, well, I want to practice in Lee County, but I can't get a job in Lee County. I haven't found anybody to do it. Who's from Lee County around here? Eddie, you need to hire somebody. Do you know somebody in Lee County that needs to hire a lawyer?
You have some leave.
That's the problem. When we hire somebody, we get burnt because they're not where they really want to be. And that's why I go back to the first question I ask these students as I don't just say, what do you want to do? I say, what do you really want to do? What do you really want to do? And then when they can step back just enough to tell me what they really want to do, then I can help give them some direction. So the same young man, JC, when I was asking him what he really wanted to do, I didn't make much progress with him. So what I did was I said, JC, I said, when you get to be my age, what do you want your life to look like? And JC, I said, close your eyes, tell me. We were sitting in the front lobby, but I said, kind of talk quiet, I'll move close. JC said, with his eyes closed, he says, I'm at the beach. I'm with my wife. We've been married a long time. And he's 29, no kids. My son's with me. and we get along. My daughter is going into the medical profession. And she's going to really be able to help some people in the medical profession. I used to make a lot of really bad mistakes, but I haven't made so many bad mistakes lately. And he opened his eyes, and it was almost like you could see a new hope that he had. But we've got to share, we've got to be able to open kind of our lives up enough so that these students who are coming out with $200,000 in debt. My goodness, I was with a guy last week, he came out with 240, he's down to 200 after 10 years. Blood pressure's up. We've got to kind of do as when the Chief Justice made his 100 county round, he left a sign in each community that said, are we treating others the way we want to be treated? And I would suggest that I need to ask myself that same question when it comes to law students. Am I treating them the way I would have wanted to be treated if I was in law school now? And I think if we do, that rather than it being on the back burner, maybe we'll move it up just a little bit, and maybe we'll make a little bit of progress with this issue. So, thank you.
Y'all see why he bats laughs? Real fast.
Okay, y'all, this really, really fast. We're meaning this committee and the state bar, are very fortunate that we are sort of partnering with the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism and hopefully with IOLTA and others. Because we find that all these different organizations or groups are doing the same thing. So it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, to kind of put our heads together and try to, because then we can really get a lot more accomplished. So we appreciate the fact that Dale and Jimbo and they're allowing, I mean, they've done a great job, like Matt said, traveling with us as we go across the state, doing our CLE. They're doing their presentations and we're sharing ideas. And this guy sends emails at 5 o'clock in the morning with here's another idea. What do you think? I mean, he's just full of ideas and he's full of energy. So we're very blessed that we can work together. We're looking forward to working with IOLTA as well.
Matt, I just want to say one last thing. Jimbo has emailed me on a couple of occasions with law students that he has met who want to come back to Rowan County. And when he does that to you, don't take that as Jimbo is trying to get you to hire that individual. For the last 20 years, my law partner and I have taken individuals who come back to Salisbury and just take them to lunch, just to tell them what the law practice is like in Salisbury. It's not a job interview. When Jimbo emails you, take them to lunch and just let them know what it's like to practice in Blaine County or Morganton or someplace like that. I mean, that's where you start building a relationship with them in their legal community, and that can help. But I commend that. I mean, every chance I get, he sent me one a week ago.
And I think you've already got
In
one.
the summer, so that's what that did. And so,
Yeah, thank you.
Well, the other thing too is in the summer, if you don't really have a lot of money and it's no expectations you're gonna hire them, but a lot of these 1Ls and 2Ls just want to mention, they want to shadow, we do that, we do a lot, and we try to pay them too, but I mean, we have people in and they know that we're not hiring, we have a family law firm, we're not interested in hiring. What that does for them is it shows them different areas of practice, it helps them to build their resume, which can help them get a job. And it really doesn't cost you, I mean, you don't have to pay them anything if you don't want to. They just want the experience and
some of them never met a lawyer. I mean, before I went to law school, I never met a lawyer, because I was a good kid. Some of them never met a lawyer. So
Be prepared in July to have some action items.
I'm done.
That was my hint.
thank you, Jimbo.
Thank you for the privilege.
Mel,
Anything else?
Thank y'all.
Mel, do you want to say anything? Are you sure?
All right. See y'all tomorrow.